Piaskowy. Joe is the VP of Brand Strategy and Partnerships at Influential. And before that, we actually had the good fortune of working with him as he ran US social media at McDonald's. And we were fortunate enough to bring him over to our company. So I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to Joe and let you take it away.
Thank you, sir. Do we have everybody on here? I'm only seeing the, not seeing faces.
Yep, you have Tony.
Okay.
Good morning.
There we go. It's probably my view here. I'm going for it. Good morning. Thank you guys for joining, man. This is a great panel. I'm really excited to get an opportunity to talk to you guys and share your knowledge with the brand innovators audience out there. Obviously, a very diverse panel right here and a ton of experience. So excited about the conversation. Before we kick it off, I was hoping maybe you guys could just share a little bit about what you do at your respective companies and maybe what brought you there, and then we can kind of get into a broader conversation. David, if you want to start us off, that'd be great.
Sure. Hey, everybody out there. I'm David Bornoff. I lead our consumer marketing team at DoorDash. I've been at the company just shy of 2 years. Prior to DoorDash, I was at Pandora. So I spent a lot of time sort of in an adjacent space. I think of food the same way I think about music, really. It's like different passion points and ways into people's hearts. And cultural connectors. These are the things that like really define our identity. And I think like food is one of those great vehicles for connecting people, sparking conversation, I think influencing change in culture. And so like the opportunity to come over from a place where I was getting to do a bit of that with music, to do that with something that looked a little bit different, but also familiar, was just a super exciting opportunity. The company is really a place that is driven by our mission, our vision, and our values. So that was something that was very important to me and really aligned with what I was looking for as my next opportunity.
Yeah, that's fantastic. At McDonald's, we did a lot of work with Pandora as well, and sort of various other music properties and companies. And, I agree that very few things go together as well as sort of music and food and the experience that the two kind of bring together. So it's really cool to kind of hear your transition, from Pandora over to DoorDash. Tony, what about you?
Sure. Hey, everyone. Tony Colvin here, Content and Media Manager at Monte. So really my role, I like to say it's a jack of all trades, but at a very high level. It's about really creating that content, telling that story, engaging consumers through our products. We have such a plethora of products. We're a legacy brand. I mean, we've been in homes, for over 130 years. And really our role is, how do we tell that story? How do we continue to engage consumers in an authentic way, and really just help them, kind of live their best lives. I got my start in advertising in agency world. So, coming from different creative shops. Joe, I actually saw that we had a very similar connection. So that was awesome to see.
We were both at Vayner for a little bit. Yeah.
So that was awesome. And then, what attracted me to Del Monte is, was the passion around really just helping people, making sure that we're providing nutritious food for families, and really just the heart behind it. And, everyone that I work with has such heart, and, that's what gets us up in the morning. That's what, allows us to innovate new products.
Yeah.
How do we continue to bring, nutritious foods to everyone? So yeah, that's a little bit about me.
Yeah, it's a pretty incredible brand. I mean, you certainly have been in my pantry since I was a child, and still there. So it's, certainly iconic. And I had no idea it was 130 years old though as well. I mean,
Yeah.
that's a pretty incredible history. Jake, how about you?
Hi, everyone. I'm Jake. I work at Impossible Foods. For those of you who don't know what Impossible Foods, who we are, we make meat, dairy, and fish products directly from plants. And the mission of the company is to replace the need for animals in the food system, in the global food system. So our first product was the Impossible Burger. I joined the company about 4 years ago, right before we launched the first product. We also have a second product, which is plant-based sausage. But we really see kind of our RNA and our technology almost like a tech platform. So we have different plant proteins and we know how they interact with each other. So we have prototypes for chicken, fish, steak, et cetera. But really, our company exists. That is a mission-based company, and so the better we do on the business side means we're fulfilling the mission, and that's what kind of excites me. It's rare to find those two things aligned. They have a kind of environmental mission directly tied to the success on the business side.
Yeah, to continue my fangirling, you know, I have been a big fan of everything you guys have been doing. It's been an incredible journey to watch as well. And to your point, you know, it's really impressive to see a mission-based company sort of quickly reach the scale you guys have been able to reach, and sort of the consumer awareness that exists around the product. You know, I think it's a bright future and certainly essential to continuing to, you know, respect our environment. So keep up the good work there. You know, before we get into kind of like us talking broadly about marketing trends, you know, something that I'm sort of really obsessed with right now is just kind of ways of working and how the last few months have really shifted that dynamic. And I'm just curious if you guys could all touch on sort of kind of where you're based. How your team dynamics have shifted? Are you working from home? And sort of maybe any challenges and benefits you guys are seeing there. Tony, I don't know if you want to kick us off on this one.
Sure. Yeah. So I think for us, we're based out of Walnut Creek, California. We're pretty much all working from home now. And I think for us, you know, actually our new senior digital manager, she actually onboarded while we were all at home. So, you know, having, you know, an extra person on the digital team joining remotely was such a challenge, but in a positive way, because it really forced us all to, I think at the very top level, it forced us all to really rely on that trust. So, you know, when you're in a day-to-day office, you can always say, yes, sure, I trust my colleagues. I know that we're doing what's right for the company. But when you're literally virtual and everyone's at home, that trust gets ratcheted up to another notch. And so for us, it's really been like that communication, kind of setting boundaries and that trust, you know, and even going into, you know, just the vertical that I handle, the content creation part of it is, you know, being able to work remotely with production teams. You know, we were already, you know, working with teams in Argentina, working with teams in New York. So for us, you know, this, you know, the pandemic forcing us to be home actually allowed us to really showcase to the larger organization, like we can still, you know, crank out, you know, top-notch content. We can still, you know, keep our activations running. We can still, you know, continue to do the things that we were doing to bring, you know, best in class content to the organization, without, you know, a drop in speed or a drop in, you know, quality or production value. So I think that has been the big key for us throughout the past couple months is A, trust, B, communication, and then C, being able to find those avenues that allow us to, you know, still remain efficient, providing quality content, and then just, you know, tapping different networks. And I think that's so important. You have to constantly iterate and figure out what is going to be the best method for getting the results that we need.
Absolutely. In terms of your, like the content creation piece that you touched on there, I mean, I know you were saying you were working with teams all across the world. I mean, how have you guys centralized it more within the States now, or have you been working, say, with influencers to get some of that content created? I mean, how have you guys sort of pivoted to still being able to create content at scale, even though you're sort of working from home now?
Sure. So I like to think of it as our content stack. You know, we have a great mix of, you know, agency, influencer, third-party content creators, third-party photographers. So for us, it's all about the mix, and knowing, you know, which team to tap for which project, and kind of that cadence. And it, you know, it's worked out well. Like I've been there for 2.5 years now, and in that time, we've just fine-tuned that cadence. So, you know, as soon as the brand managers come to us and say, hey, we got a project, immediately we know which team to tap, and we're able to start, immediately building out those timelines. So I think it's about having a stack, and really knowing when to tap which team for what project.
Cool. And David, what about at DoorDash?
Yeah, I mean, I'd echo a lot of what Tony said. I think the team has been relatively distributed throughout. We've built this up as an organization that's across the country. Marketing doesn't just sit in HQ. So the idea of having to understand how to work remotely was kind of a thing that we had somewhat figured out before. I don't think it was ever perfect. It's still not perfect. There's a lot of learning that, is still to be done. We're still trying to figure out like what's the most efficient way to have a brainstorm when you've got 12 people on a Zoom meeting. There are these little things that are just like, obvious when you think about them, and then you put them into practice and you go, oh shit, like this is not getting to alignment on something while you're talking about, having 25 people potentially on a remote meeting, challenging. So what we've done is really look to like, how do we empower individuals? How do we put them in the DRI seat and really let them own the outcome? And that's been pretty effective. So we're saying now, like, listen, you own this thing. Ultimately, you're going to be the decision maker, and whatever the tools are, whatever the resources you need, you're going to have them. But at the end of the day, like, this is going to live with you, because we just simply can't like get to the thing that you could do when you're sitting in a room with a person, right? Or a team of people. As far as like the partners and our vendors and who we use and how we create content, like those things are really almost entirely what Tony said. So a lot of that would just be me repeating things. I think maybe the add-on to that is we have three audiences, right? We have our merchants, we have our dashers, and then there's the consumers. So we're creating content across all three of those audiences and really leaning into those different groups of people to help us create as well. So it's a lot of like UGC and a lot of leaning into like, here's this great resource of, hundreds of thousands of restaurant partners that we can talk to, lots and lots and lots of dashers that we can talk to, and consumers to help us tell the stories.
How do you target the dashers versus the other two segments you were talking about there? Is that like, is there sort of an internal type of content source for them, or maybe you could speak to that a little bit more?
Yeah, so both. I mean, I think about them the same way that I think about our consumer audience. We are constantly communicating with dashers about things they need to know, and we're also acquiring new dashers, right? So we need to keep the roads supplied. There's a growth team that focuses on dasher acquisition, and there's an audience team which is just focused on like dasher messaging. How do we tell the story to dashers to make it the most appealing place to work?
Absolutely. And before I move on to Jake, I agree that the brainstorming piece is certainly a challenge in this new environment. Have you guys found tools that you think work well in that environment to sort of foster more collaboration and sort of interactivity?
Yeah, I wish I had a good answer here. I found a lot of like memes that I just share that
Right.
people that the thing is totally screwed. No, look, I think a lot of it has just become like this idea of the trust, right? Of putting trust in a certain like handful of people and removing as many blockers as possible. So taking brainstorms that could have been, 12, 13 people and reducing the size of that group to something more manageable. Getting very, very, very sharp on briefs. So where we might have been a little bit looser in a creative brief because marketing could have sat with creatives to sort of work it out together. On the marketing side, I'm making sure that the team is delivering the sharpest brief possible. That's just like consolidated, clear, so that you can put it in front of a creative and get back something that's like going to be a lot closer than we probably would have done had we all been able to sit in a room together.
Right. Absolutely. Jake, how have things changed there for Impossible?
Yeah, I think agreed with what Tony and David said about kind of team. I'll talk about things kind of. This is caveated in the sadness that is COVID, so always acknowledging that. what we have done coming out of COVID and because of COVID are some pretty interesting business changes. We launched a DT, a direct-to-consumer channel, which was exciting for us. Actually working with folks over at DoorDash, David, on a kind of an impossible shop on DoorDash that we've launched a pilot in Los Angeles. And those are things that historically the company has not been interested in doing. We were not interested in kind of running our own restaurant, certainly, or a virtual brand. We were not focusing on the direct consumer channel. And because of COVID, we quickly, first of all, we quickly ramped up our retail expansion and also launched a direct to consumer channel, which we probably would not have done otherwise. So those are just, I guess, kind of business things that were interesting that came out of the reality.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, to your point of, it's obviously a very difficult situation, you know, and a lot of pain and suffering has come from COVID across the board, but it has allowed us to, you know, think about new ways of doing business and working, which I think certainly is a benefit. You know, I have worked at agencies, and then obviously McDonald's, one of the biggest corporations as well. And now kind of back to the agency model. And it felt, especially at corporations, like we had sort of entered this sort of unconscious mode of work where you just sort of defaulted to this 8 hours a day and so many meetings, and obviously like 8+ hours a day and the 5-day work week. And I've always just been like, why can't we innovate beyond that? You know, so I'm really interested now to see what kind of innovations actually stick here, especially as we start hopefully going back to the offices and being able to move around a little bit more. So thank you guys for sharing that. I think there's some really interesting perspectives there. You know, Jake, you kind of touched on where I wanted to shift it now, which is really how your strategies have changed since March. Have you guys been exploring new channels? Has social or maybe influencers become more of a priority, less of a priority? I mean, really, how has your strategic approach shifted since March? David, if you want to kick us off here, that'd be great.
Sure. So marketing at DoorDash is 2.5 years old. Like, just as an idea, and as an organization, it's about 2.5 years old. So everything we're doing is relatively new. We're still figuring out things, COVID or not, that we hadn't done before. I think what really happened over the last couple months was an acceleration of a lot of the things that we may have had on the roadmap, but were things that we were going to get to over the next, like, call it 18 months. And now in 4 months, we've got there. Yeah. I think the things that shifted most for us were really more around messaging and driving forward the values and vision and mission of the company versus speaking to it in marketing terms as, you know, a very functional thing, right? Like, up until today, most brands were, in our space at least, like, touting the functional benefits of food delivery, because in a relatively new category, like, we had to do a lot of just education. With COVID, with everybody staying home, we were able to sort of differentiate on the thing that ultimately mattered most to us, which was, who are we as a business? What do we stand for? And how can we put that in front of a consumer audience? And we've been able to do that, and using some of the things that we may have not prioritized previously, like influencers. So where we were doing a lot of mass reach messaging to every single person with, you know, a mouth and a stomach, because essentially that's the audience, we're now thinking a little bit more about, like, when we start to break down our audience into cohorts and bucket them, who are the right people to communicate the messages that matter to those audiences? And that's where we've started leaning into influencers a little bit more. We've also found that, like, you know, everybody has been very generous with their time over the last couple of months. So we've had an opportunity to work with some really incredible talent to help us do the thing that we're really focused on right now, which is just keeping restaurants open. Yeah. So our whole thing over the last couple of months has been really, like, less about DoorDash and more about, like, let's just get people ordering food. Mm-hmm. It wasn't very clear at the beginning of this, like, how people would respond to getting things delivered to their house, especially foods, especially things that you're going to put in your body, right? Like, it's one thing to get a package, it's another thing to, in an uncertain time where there's, like, this general, like, confusion around, like, what is this virus, and then have something delivered to your door that you're going to like consume. And that was wreaking havoc on the restaurant industry. It still is, right? Like everybody on this call here, this video chat understands that. And so our job was like, how do we just like help support the restaurants? And because of that, you know, a lot of people from, I would say like the top tier influencers and celebrities down to like the sort of more niche folks, we're all willing to just pitch in and really help. And that's like something that, you know, we've definitely like leveraged and are still working with and trying to understand how to now take that and like make it a little bit more focused on like what's next for us.
Absolutely. Tony, how about you?
Yeah, I would have to agree with a lot of what David said. For us, it was that messaging, right? That move away from the functional to just inspiring people to make recipes. People were already at home. They are they're getting fatigued. They need recipe inspiration. Their days are kind of bookmarked now, or just kind of separated by mealtime. And so for us, we really saw this as a point to provide consumers with just ways that they can use our product. We recognize that, because of COVID, a lot of people were, maybe they hadn't looked at that can of, corn in their pantry, or they had a can of peaches that, they've had in the pantry for a month or two. And they're like, what do I do with this? And so we really put our heads together and we're like, what are the fun recipes that people would love to do? Like mango slushies, or, like mocktails, things that, just provide that natural excitement. And really just give people a way to like break up their day with fun recipes. Another idea was, people are home with their kids. How do we provide like kind of STEM activities? How do we provide those like fun activities or breaks that you can take with your kids? Because we realize that, our consumers are multifaceted people. They have so much going on. And so, our heart was, how do we continue to just provide that inspiration, provide that encouragement, show that we actually care? And then in terms of just kind of things that popped up out of nowhere, we did kind of an organic TikTok test, because we saw that, people were, talking about one of our products. Just, everyone's at home and they discovered they loved this one product. And we're like, what, why don't we just kind of, talk to people on TikTok, and it was one of those things where, we just got to see the organic nature of a platform. And, I've been in social for so long. I remember it reminded me so much of Vine. When Vine came on, everybody was just on it. Marketer, you get really excited by that, because now it's less of us talking to a consumer and we're having that two-way dialogue. Like they're already enjoying something that we have provided for them, and we can just talk and have this dialogue. So it was like really, really cool to just see just the organic nature of just being able to provide people, inspiration, and to have that kind of reciprocated. So that's what we've kind of been focused on the past few months.
Did that lead you guys to launching your own TikTok channel, or are you guys mostly still just sort of interacting there and kind of monitoring how people are talking about the brand?
Yeah, so it actually led to us launching a TikTok channel for that specific product, because it's so geared towards teens.
What product
that it's called Bubble Fruit. So if you guys haven't tried it, you have to try it. It's popping boba, and it's so fun and exciting, and kids just flock to it, adults too. And so we just realized that on TikTok, people were doing all these videos, just super excited about it. And we're like, let's talk to them. There's this, so, we had this one cool video with like a really, really fun guitar riff. We were like, hey, this is kind of TikTok-ish. Like, let's do this and see what happens. And just the response we've gotten. And so I think this period of time has allowed brands, including us, to just play and to just really see what is working well with consumers, and in an organic and just really authentic way, because everyone's at home. And just kind of seeing what content just kind of sticks has been awesome.
Absolutely. And Jake, in terms of how you approach your sort of role as the global head of influence for the brand, I mean, how has that changed for you? Are you approaching influencers and partnerships differently? Have you guys sort of uncovered new avenues as a result of the last few months?
Yeah, we haven't. I mean, we're approaching it differently just because we're scaling as a company and we're getting bigger. We have an international launch coming up, another one which is pretty exciting. But I would not say that COVID has changed the way we work with influencers. We've always taken an approach of they know best. We empower them to tell our story. We're only working with folks who are genuinely excited about our mission, and let them kind of tell why they are excited about Impossible, as opposed to us telling them why I'm excited about Impossible. So I don't think that has really changed. I'm trying to think of any other. I mean, I guess a little bit of content production where the team is producing less just because of COVID, and so we're relying on other folks at their home to do a little bit more, but not in a meaningful way. No real change.
Yeah. So in terms of, in sort of reading your bio and looking at what you guys do there, where you sort of, it looks like you oversee larger partnerships, celebrity interactions, as well as your, maybe your sort of influencer campaigns at scale. Just generally speaking, then I'm just curious, how do you as a brand approach influencers beyond just what you had touched on about, making sure you're working with people who believe in the mission, are on authentic fans? How does it sort of fit into your overall marketing funnel or plan?
Yeah, so there's kind of three buckets that get the most of my attention. One is, we've raised a series of financing rounds, and part of that strategic approach is bringing in strategic investors who are coming in for far less than some of our institutional investors. And unlike other brands, we are not, giving equity in exchange for publicity. All of the folks who are coming in and investing in us are coming in on the same terms as everyone else. So the Jay-Z's, like Katy Perry's of the world are giving us money. We are not giving free shares away. And that's something that we've had a hard line in the sand, and it has been really, really beneficial for us. It kind of takes away, it self-selects for folks who are, like I said, really excited about what we're doing and want to help us. It's almost the analogy is almost like a political campaign. And so that's kind of one bucket. The other bucket is, micro, macro influencer engagement, as you'd expect, and then also a consumer-facing loyalty program. And we kind of see the loyalty program. I kind of jokingly say we have a program for the Jay-Z's of the world. We have a program for micro influencers, and then my mom in Vermont, who might not be on social media, but she's going to the grocery store. She's talking to friends at church. She's influential in her community, and we kind of have a program for the for your what I'll call average consumer, but really seeing everyone as an influencer. Most people have some sort of social media, some sort of circle of influence, and just how we have a way to empower Jay-Z, we have a way to empower my lovely mother, Nancy, in Vermont.
I love that. David and Tony, I'd be curious how you guys think about influencer marketing as part of your kind of overall strategy as well. It can be in relation to the last few months or just how you approach it. Tony, if you want to start.
Sure, I can jump in. So, yeah, I think the way, influencers for us is, an integral part of, just our marketing stack, just being able to, leverage a group of people to continue to share that engagement about our products, about who we are as a company. About 2 years ago, we really took a hard look at how influencers can help us on a larger scale. And so for that immediate piece, it was leveraging influencers as content creators, because we recognized, we can make green bean casserole every year, 3 times a year, post it on our social. But if we have an influencer who has a fantastic audience, they are all foodies, and they do a slight variation using our canned, French green beans, like the exponential reach of that is phenomenal. So, why don't we work with them? And in a way, they become brand advocates, and being able to use their content across our channels, and even creating a portal on our website, called Friends of Del Monte, where it's actually showcasing influencer recipes alongside our branded recipes. It really just belongs to life. So we really think of influencers as going through that entire consumer journey, and really just to work hard for. So I mean, that's how we have looked at influencers. I'm so excited for this next upcoming year for us and influencers, because again, it's about building up that relationship, having that common thread. So if you see, using similar influencers throughout the entire year and cross campaigns, we also saw great success with that. So if we have, a mom of two kids who's a photographer, but also an influencer, and she loves, our adult fruit cup snacks, she can talk about adult fruit cup snacks. She can talk about giving her kids like the diced peaches. But then if she's trying to make dinner, she can talk about our contadina tomatoes. So I mean, there's ways to just build those relationships, and really have that long lasting relationship with influencers. And we've seen that work really well for us.
Absolutely. I apparently was enjoying the conversation too much and was ignoring the fact that we were supposed to start Q&A. So I'm going to do that, and I'll just kick it off with you, David. Our first question is, how can marketing and technology leaders structure their teams and recruit highly coveted talent for a new era that demands an increasing array of skill sets?
Look for diversity. I think like the most important thing we can do as folks in positions to hire is really look for diverse talent and champion it. I think like if you prioritize that, you're going to set yourself up for success. Like hard stop.
Yeah, it's good. I like it. Jake, do you have any additional thoughts on that and how you might approach it?
I would just totally agree. And I think one definition of diversity should be diverse. So I think there's the obvious ones that come to mind, but then there's also just diverse backgrounds, right? I don't have a food background. I worked in entertainment before this. And I actually started my career at Impossible on the sales team. Had never really sold any sort of food before. And so I think, totally agree with David. And just to double click and say that, there's obvious diversity, and there's also diverse backgrounds and skill sets.
Absolutely. Here's something I definitely want to get from all three of you. It's a question around trends. So, what kind of trends are you guys seeing in technology and social that you're really paying attention to, that you think are going to be essential for the foreseeable future for the brand, whether it's the rest of 2020 or into 2021? Tony, if you want to kick us off.
Sure. So I think for us, what we're seeing is just shoppability of social content. So for us, it's going to be that kind of add to cart feature. How do you get consumers from looking at an Instagram post, looking at a Facebook post, going in, building a cart, and ultimately buying the product? So, we're constantly looking at ways to make our content shoppable, and making sure that shoppable experience is as seamless as possible. I think Instagram, I used to be an avid Instagram shopper because it was so easy. It's like, oh, I like this post. Oh, I'm going to shop now. And in 2 seconds, I have a product. And I think a lot of brands, especially in CPG, are kind of taking note, and continue to look at ways to iterate in that shoppability space. How do you make your product shoppable? You continue to get the consumer to get lowered, further down the funnel. So I think that's the trend that I'm currently watching, especially in the social space, is, that e-commerce. How do you get people from the post to...
Absolutely. David, how about your team, or you and your team?
Yeah, I was just taking notes from what Tony was saying. Yeah, I mean, look, we're experimenting with a couple things here, and one is just that it's how are we leveraging editorial content to convert folks? So thinking about like, how do we tell better stories that are also shoppable stories? Get somebody excited about the origins of pho, and turns out you can also be delivered a carousel of pho that's available in a 5-mile radius of your house.
Yeah.
That's something that we see folks being pretty interested in. I think there's like, two parts to that question. One is like the behavioral thing. And then as far as like trends that I see on impacting brands, I think like, this is just such an overused word, but I think it still is relevant, which is like people are looking for authenticity and continue to look for authenticity. And now I think probably not more than ever, but it's very prescient, is that people are looking for brands who stand for something.
Yeah, absolutely. Jake, wait, we have Chris coming on. Maybe Jake, if you could highlight a couple quick trends before we get booted. I'm very curious as to, what you're seeing and what you're interested in.
Yeah, again, I don't know if I can foresee the future, but I mean, I know I can't, but I think something that when we started this year, the vast majority of our customers, when I say customers, not consumers, are people who are buying our product, were restaurants. We had very little retail presence, and obviously restaurants were just, as everyone knows, like really hit hard. So we spent the last 3 months really trying to help in any way we can the restaurant partners that we currently have, and I think eating behavior, eating habits, whether it's through delivery, ghost kitchens, takeout. I think in-restaurant dining is going to continue to shift and change, and that's something we're watching. I can't predict what it's going to be, but that's certainly a trend we're watching. And then as a result, we really, like I said, we launched direct to consumer. We also really pulled up our retail expansion because folks are obviously
awesome. Cool. Well, thank you guys so much for the conversation. I certainly learned a lot and really appreciate you guys just being open and transparent and sharing your knowledge. And have a good rest of your week, and hope I get a chance to talk to you again sometime soon.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me.
Cool. Take care, guys.
Thank you all so much, gentlemen. Really appreciate it. Well, we just had an all men's panel. I think the only fitting thing to do is have an all women's panel. So with that, I'm going to transition us over to a session that is going to be led by Tiffany Pettit, who is our Director of Strategic Partnerships at Influential. We're going to be joined by Giovanna Alfieri, the Head of Marketing and E-commerce at The Honey Pot. We'll also hear from Madeline Benifla, the Media Director at Acento. The session, as I said, will